So we have question 3 for January 2019, right? Economics, 4EC0111. So we have a case study here, Ecuador, the annual general growth, annual growth rates, the GDP of Ecuador. So we have the case study. So it's there. Going to the question, identify which stage of the economic cycle Ecuador experienced during 2010 and during 2016. When we talk about the economic cycle, we're talking about the stages of the economy, which is from either the boom, recession, recovery, and back to boom. After recovery, it goes back to boom. Okay. So basically, when we look at the case study of Ecuador, from 2009, because it's about 2010 anyway, but from 2009, Ecuador was in negative 2% in 2009. Going to 2010, from 2009 to 2010, Ecuador witnesses a growth in its GDP from -2% to 8%. So that will represent boom for Ecuador. So that from -2% to in 2009 to 8% in 2010 represents a boom. I think that point is clear. That's boom. Then in 2016, going back to 2016 from 2015. From 2015, it was a negative GDP, and all through 2016 was negative GDP. So that means there was a negative GDP, an economic decline for 2 quarters, which means it represents recession. So there's recession in 2016, and there's boom in 2010. Clear? We go to question 3, Roman figure 2. By the end of 2017, economic growth in Ecuador was increasing rapidly. Explain 2 advantages of economic growth. First, what is economic growth? Economic growth represents an increase in the country's output. That means an increase in the country's GDP. That's economic growth. So what are the advantages of economic growth? The first one I got is about increase in household income, and the second one is about increase in tax revenue. So let's talk about increase in household income. As soon as the economy grows, it means employment opportunity would have arrived as a result of that. And increasing employment opportunity arrived. Increasing employment opportunity will bring about increasing income of households. And increasing income for households allows them to buy more goods and services than what they used to buy. So that's the first point there. And the second one is about increasing tax revenue. Tax revenue will come. What is a tax? So it's a levy a levy imposed by government in consumption of goods and production of goods or services. So as soon as the economy is growing, it means income taxes such as income taxes and corporation tax would also increase for government because households will have more to spend. So that means government might have as well make more from VAT, value-added tax, or income tax, which value-added tax is an example of indirect tax anyway. But because consumption is increasing, that means value-added tax would have increased for government. Because income level has increased based on economic growth, it means income tax would have increased for government. Do you get my point? And for the fact that income is spending is increasing within the economy, firms will also be making more, and that means firms will be witnessing profit. Corporation tax will also increase for government, so government will be witnessing an increase in its revenue, which might be used, on healthcare, on spending on healthcare, education, or infrastructure. So these are the benefits of economic growth. I think it's clear. That's about economic growth. Then we move on. Question 3. One disadvantage of economic growth is pollution and environmental damage. Ecuador uses an environmental tax on vehicle pollution to reduce pollution caused by motor vehicles. Taxation is the best way for the government to protect the environment. Do you agree with this statement? I support and I oppose anyway. So first, you have to define what taxation is. So what is taxation? Taxation is a levy imposed by government in the production and consumption of goods and services. That is what taxation is. So taxation is the best way to reduce pollution caused by motor vehicle based on the following reason. 1, it increases cost of polluting activities. So if government imposes more tax or increases taxes, it means the cost of producing those pollution would reduce. And if that happens, pollution would reduce. Do you get my point? So, and it increases the cost of polluting activities as a result, bringing about a fall in polluting activities, which means reduction in environmental damage. So if taxes are imposed by government, it increases the cost of polluting the air or causing environmental damage. So because you incur more cost, you wouldn't have any other choice than to reduce, because when you incur more cost, it reduces your profit. Yes, but you want to be more, you want to be more profitable, right? So what will you have to do? You need to reduce polluting the air, pollution or environmental damage. So if pollution is reduced, then environmental damage will also reduce. That's about using taxation. But however, taxation might not be the best way to best way in the following reasons. One, it might not affect the richer people because the rich people, they have the ability to pay these taxes. And that means they might continue to cause pollution. And that will increase environmental damage. Two, increase in such tax consumption it's consumption. Increase in such tax is it's a regressive tax because it's an indirect tax and it only affects those who are not rich. Do you understand? Value-added tax, like taxes on consumption, does not have any weight on those that are rich. It only affects those that are not rich. So it means you are going to take more from the low income earner than the rich income earner, which makes it regressive. So that's the reason why taxation might not be used. Do you understand that? And I also made another point. I wrote, if polluting activity is priced now, if the polluting activities are price inelastic, so that means whatever prices they charge, they will continue to pollute it because to them it is price inelastic. And when it is price inelastic, it means no matter what the price is, consumption would not stop. So that means polluting activities will not stop because the price of pollution is inevitable. Do you understand? The price is inelastic. So that means no matter what the price is, they will still pollute it. Polluting activities will not stop. So that means taxes might not be useful there. Other policies might be useful. Is it clear? That's about growth and taxation. Any question about it? So go to the next question. It was we did growth and taxation, right? Growth and taxation. Economic growth and taxation, yes. Thank you. So we have question B, right? 1B, okay. In September 2017, the inflation rate in Ecuador fell to 0.03%. The Central Bank of Ecuador responded by reducing the interest rate from 8.25 to 7.75. This is an example of what? Right. September 2017, the inflation rate in Ecuador fell. So based on this, they said reducing the interest rate from 8.25 to 7.75. That means there's a fall or a cut in the interest rate. Now, this is an example of what? It's monetary policy. Why is it monetary policy? We say monetary policy is the use of interest rate, foreign exchange rate, or money supply by government to correct the economy or to manipulate the economy. That is what monetary policy is about. So I think that point is clear. So the first answer is for B1, it's A. Now move on. Identify and briefly explain two possible causes of inflation. What is inflation itself? Inflation is a persistent rise in the price of goods and services within an economy. That's inflation. So we have three types of inflation, but we need two here anyway. So we're going to talk about demand pull inflation and cost push inflation. So for demand pull inflation, it means that this is an inflation that occurs as a result of an increase in aggregate demand within the economy. When aggregate demand increases in the economy, it might mean that demand exceeds supply. That is demand pull inflation. Then we have cost push. For cost push inflation, it means the cost of factors of production is rising over the time for firms. As a result, their cost of production has increased, bringing about an increase in the price of goods and services. Do you get it?
Yes.
The cost of factors of production increase. That means the factor inputs like land, labor, capital is increasing. As a result, the cost of production increases. That is cost push inflation. Is that clear?
Yeah.
So go on to question C. Consumers will always benefit from a reduction in interest rates. Assess this statement. First, what is interest rate? Interest rate is the price of borrowing or savings. That is what interest rate is. So a reduction in interest rate will bring about one, I wrote. If all interest rate makes borrowing becomes cheaper. So if borrowing becomes cheaper, what does that imply? It means households will be able to borrow more. allowing them to have an increase in their purchasing power. And having an increase in your purchasing power means your living standard might improve. Do you get the first point here? Borrowing becomes cheaper. As a result, you can borrow more to spend. So spending more than what you used to spend improves your standard of living. That's the first one. The second point is about the mortgage. So if interest rate reduces, that means the amount you have to spend on mortgage, what you have to spend on mortgage will reduce. As a result, making you to have more real income with you, which is another advantage. I think it's clear. So go to question C. Ecuador has one of the lowest unemployment rates in Latin America. In October 2017, it was 5.8%. The government claimed that this was the result of its focus on supply-side policy. To what extent are supply-side policies the best way to reduce unemployment in the economy? So first, we have to define what supply-side policy is. I wrote, supply-side policy are used to increase productivity and efficiency within the economy. That's what you use supply-side policy for. So the advantage of having supply-side policy, or the use of supply-side policy, example of supply-side policy is education and training. So education and training will improve the skills and knowledge of the people, making them to become more employable. That's the first advantage. Do you get it? Two, government incentives. Another form of supply-side policy is government incentives, like maybe cutting taxes on some areas that have increase in that witnesses high unemployment rates. So government might, give incentives to firms that coming to this area, you'll be paying less taxes. Do you get my point? So I wrote, government incentives such as reduction in taxation may attract employers to set businesses in area that have high unemployment rates, which as a result bring about an increase in employment. So supply-side policy will bring about, like I told you earlier, education and training, which improves the skills and knowledge of the workforce or the people in the environment, which makes them to become more employable. And two, government incentives, which can be from maybe cut of taxes in some areas that are highly unemployed. So to encourage employers to set up businesses there to reduce unemployment. However, supply-side policy might not be the best way to reduce unemployment based on the following reason. One, let's go back to education and training itself. You cannot, when there's education and training, which government wants to use? What about if there's no employment or when there's no job? Without job, education and training does not have any impact. So you can only educate people and train them if jobs are available. So if jobs are not available, then supply-side policy is not useful. Then you can try other policies. Two, it doesn't solve seasonal and cyclical unemployment. There's cyclical and seasonal unemployment. Supply-side policy cannot solve them. So what is cyclical? It can be expensive. Yes, the policy might be too, you said expensive? How expensive to visit? This is government. Look. I mean to the workers. No, it might be too expensive for government. Maybe the government, because it's government policy. It might be expensive for government. That's the point there. And also I wrote about the policy might be too much or too little. And when we talk about too much or too little, it means the supply-side policy might not be enough to correct unemployment. And might be too much to correct unemployment. As a result, both of them brings about government failure. So there might be government failure in the course of using supply-side policy. Those are the reasons why government might not try to use supply-side policy. So if there's unemployment rate, government might try to work on inflation, which is fiscal policy. Inflation rate. How do we use government fiscal? Yeah, government can use for unemployment. Government can use fiscal policy instead of supply-side policy. Subsidizing for firms. Because if government subsidizes for firms, in the course of when we talk about education and training, if government subsidizes for firms, that reduces their cost of production. As a result, they might be able to expand. That would increase employment opportunities. So government spending on education and training would now be ideal because firms are willing to expand their operation. But if there are no jobs, supply-side policy will not work. Other policies like fiscal policy might work. Clear? Yes. Question 4. The Philippines is said to be a developing country. I want to talk about developing countries. These are countries that rely mostly on raw materials and they do more of either secondary production or primary production. That makes them developing. So they have to they import services. That makes them developing countries, and it might be one of the countries that has more industrialization. Yeah. So these are the features of a developing country. Yeah. Now let's go to the question. They said the characteristics of a developing country include low GDP per capita, low population growth, low employment, low labor productivity. Low GDP per capita, yes, it's possible. Mm-hmm. Low population growth rate. No, population is just about how much a country is, and it does not mean you are rich or poor, you are developed or not undeveloped. Mm-hmm. China has a larger population, and China is becoming a developed economy. So it's not about population. Even population might make an economy to be more developed. Yeah. Low labor productivity. Low labor productivity, yes. It's a feature of unemployment, but for the fact that there's low population growth, it makes A not the answer. For B, GDP per capita, no. If a country is developed, then you have a developing country might have a low GDP, not high GDP. Yeah. So a country that is developed will have a high GDP, and here we're talking about developing countries. So it's B is out of it already. Then we look at C, low GDP per capita, yes. High population growth rates, possibly. Low labor productivity, yes. For low labor productivity, yes. So I think it's C. But let's look at D anyway. Low GDP per capita, high population growth, and high labor productivity. High labor productivity takes D out of it. So the answer is C. I think it's clear. Yeah. Explain the difference between FDI and development aid. When we talk about FDI, we're talking about, I wrote here, FDI is this is the money invested into a country by foreign firms. Money invested into a country by foreign firms. That's FDI. They might later become multinationals anyway. And when we talk about development aids are money you get or incentives from other countries from a country or countries that are rich to countries that are vulnerable. So helps from other countries to countries that are vulnerable are what we call development aid.
I don't understand.
Development aid means you receive money or other benefits from countries that are developed because your country is vulnerable, because your country is less developed, your country needs help. Yeah, needs help. So monetary help you get from other countries are called development aid. Not only monetary, it could be food, it could be stuff.
Yeah, it's aid.
Yeah, is it clear?
Yeah. Okay.
Then we move on. It said, apart from creating employment, okay, I have to do this. Yeah, so apart from creating employment, explain two other benefits that FDI can bring to the economy of a country such as Philippines. Mm-hmm. You know, we said FDI is money invested into a country by foreign investors or foreign firms. That is FDI. So when FDI invests, with FDI investment, it means employment opportunity can increase within their country, like multinational setting up in a country. Mm-hmm. When they set up, it creates jobs opportunity for the locals. Yeah. So now they said, aside creating job, what other functions or what other benefits will FDI bring into an economy? Yeah, I wrote one, infrastructure. How do FDI improve infrastructure in an economy? You know, when FDI comes in, if the country has, maybe for example, the country has raw materials needed by the multinationals, but there's lack of road network, there's poor communication, electricity is poor, they might come in to invest in these things to make it smooth for them for operations. So when they do it for that country, it stays in that country. So the infrastructure within the country, the infrastructure in the economy in the country improves as a result of FDI or MNCs or coming into the country to help their own operations. So they are doing it, they are investing because those things that they are investing on will help their operation, will make their operation to be smooth. Yeah. So that's an advantage for the host country. And two, transfer of technology. Multinationals, when they come into a country, they might come with the latest technology, which is important for their own operations. As a result, the host country, the people in the host country, the firms in the host country might have to adapt to those technology, which is good for the country too. Yeah. So these are the advantages or benefits of FDI. they transfer technology, they transfer culture, ideas, they transfer knowledge, and also they come up with improvement in infrastructure.
Yeah.
Is it clear? And for improvement in infrastructure, the government of the country might also invest in infrastructure to be able to attract FDIs. Is it clear? Any question about FDI?
No.
Okay. So we'll move on. Question 4. Are you there? It said, assess the impact. The peso is the currency of the Philippines. Between 2013 and 2017, it depreciated against the US dollar and most other major currencies. Assess the impact of this that this depreciation may have had on firms involved in international trade in the Philippines. First, when we talk about depreciation of a country's currency, depreciation means, are you with me?
Yes.
Depreciation means a loss in value of a country's currency in the floating exchange market. A loss in value of a country's currency in the floating exchange market, not in the fixed. If it's the fixed, it devaluates. And I told you when we are having exchange rate as a topic, we talked about depreciation and devaluation.
Yes.
Depreciation represents floating exchange rate. Devaluation represents fixed exchange rate. Appreciation represents floating exchange rate. Revaluation represents fixed exchange rate. I think the point is clear there.
Yeah.
So that's about, now they say, what are the impacts of depreciation? There are positive impacts and negative impacts. So for the positives, if depreciation in the country's currency will bring about increase in exports. Why would there be increase in export? Because the export become cheaper. So that means the pesos, the Philippine currency, other currencies, less foreign currency would buy more of Philippine currencies, the pesos, which is an advantage for the Philippines because it increases their exports. So exporting firms will be highly competitive, bringing about increase in sales. For exporting firms that do exports, because we're talking about the impact on firms. So firms that do exports will have an increase in their sales. Why? Because they become more internationally competitive. Two. And the third point I make here is about domestic firms. Firms that produce locally. And if they produce locally and they have to compete with foreign firms, it makes them to be more competitive. And that increases their revenue too.
Yes.
Then what are the negatives? One, imports. Imports become expensive, meaning that more pesos must be needed to buy few dollars, which is not good. Two, firms that import may lose profitability. Firms that do more of imports, their the price of import will be high. As a result, they won't be making profit as they used to make. As that's the second point, which is negative. And the third point for domestic firms that do imports, like they rely on importation of raw materials, makes the price of raw materials to be expensive. As a result, they will be less competitive, which makes them to have a fall in revenue. So these are the positives and the negatives of depreciation in the exchange rate, in the floating exchange rate. Is it clear? Okay. Go to 4. Are you there? It said the Philippines has free trade agreements with China, India, Japan, Republic of Korea, Australia, New Zealand. They are under the ASEAN because they mentioned we did that in the trading block. Remember that? Okay. So explain one advantage and one disadvantage of free trade for a country such as the Philippines. First, what is free trade? Free trade involves buying and selling of goods from one country to another without restriction. That is free trade. So what is the advantage of free trade? Yeah, I wrote tariffs may no longer be on export. So with free trade, that means there's no tariffs. And without tariffs, it means that countries exporting firms in the Philippines might be able to export their goods to whatever countries they want to export it to without any restriction. That increases their revenue. Clear? What is the problem about that? The problem comes into the advantages too. So when you look at the problem, we said there's free export. Where there's free export, there will be free imports too. So free imports means foreign businesses might be able to sell their goods into the domestic market of the Philippines, making the domestic firms in the Philippines to be less competitive if foreign firms are able to, are more efficient than the Philippines, the domestic firms.
Yeah.
Efficiency from the foreign firms makes their cost of production to fall. As a result, import goods will be cheaper for domestic consumers. That means the people of Philippines, they might be able to buy, they will do more of import than export because the price of import is cheaper than the price of, they may do more of import than buying from domestic firms because the price of import is cheaper than the prices of domestic goods.
Yeah.
And that becomes a problem for domestic firms in the industry in Philippines. Is it clear? Any question about that? So we'll move on. Question 4, right? Roman figure 1, 2, or Roman figure 1. No?
Question 4, figure 4.
Figure 4, okay. The Philippines still imposes tariffs on some imports from other countries. For example, potatoes are subject to a 40% tariff. That means tariffs are import or taxes on importation. That means there's 40% tax on importation of potatoes. So the figure 4 shows the market for imported potatoes in the Philippines before a tariff is imposed. So before the imposition of tariffs, there is equilibrium price and quantity at PE and QE, where demand and supply equals.
Yeah.
Now, imposition of taxes, imposition of import tax will bring about an increase in the cost of production.
Yeah.
An increase in cost of production will reduce the quantity supplied in the market of potatoes, reducing the quantity supplied from QE to Q1. QE to Q1, that's a negative now, leftward. As a result of that, the supply curve will shift leftward from S to S1. Then you have to draw the graph now because QE has moved to Q1 and S has moved to S1. They're drawing the graph. So the graph now will be at S1, QE1, then PE1 to finish up with the graph to PE1. And there's going to be a movement in the demand curve upward to increase the price from PE to P1. Is it clear? So it's here already. That's the graph. So we'll move on. So question 2. Explain 2 possible reasons why the Philippines might impose tariffs on some imports. One of the reasons why the Philippines might impose taxes on imports is to increase government revenue. And when government revenue is increased, it means government will be able to spend on infrastructure, health, or education. 2, to protect infant industries. And when we talk about protecting infant industry, we're talking about maybe there are some firms in the Philippines that produces potatoes also. So if they are the farmers that they produce potato in Philippines, if there's potato in Philippines and there are some firms that can produce it within the Philippines, as a result, government wants to protect them to ensure that they are able to compete with foreign firms too. So government might come up with tariffs to increase the price of importation, which means the price of imported potatoes would rise, meaning that domestic people the domestic people will start buying domestic produced potatoes, which means increasing revenue for firms, the local firms. As a result, they might be able to expand. So government might impose tariffs to increase revenue for government for spending on public goods or public expenditure, or to protect infant industries so that they can also grow and they'll be able to compete with foreign businesses. Clear? They said in the second quarter of 2017, the Philippines export of agricultural commodities rose by 2.6% to just over 4 billion. This was mainly because of rising global commodity prices. Assess the benefits that the production of commodities bring to the economy of a country such as Philippines. So for production of commodities, basically we're talking about production using raw materials. That is what production of commodities is. And when a country has raw materials and it's able to use those raw materials to produce, it means there will be setting up firms in that country that would increase employment opportunity. So it creates employment opportunity. So creating employment opportunity involves making use of natural resources, which means businesses, firms will be able to produce and set up in that country. That is why that's why it creates employment opportunity. Two, it increases the country's GDP and contributes to the growth of the economy. When there's natural resources, one of the factors that improves the production possibility curve or the PPC of the country is increase in natural resources. So if natural resources are increasing, it enables the country to increase its output. As a result, the GDP of the country will increase. That's the second point there. And the third point I made is about export itself. If a country's GDP is increasing, it means the output of the country, the national income of the country is increasing. That means the country will be able to do more exports. Doing more exports will improve the current account balance of payments. Is it clear? Those are the 3 points I make there. And however, doing more of commodities, I wrote, however, reliance on commodity might not go well for the country as other countries may start producing the same commodity. So if that what we call it over-reliance or over-dependence, over-dependence on one resources or natural resources means you are vulnerable to other countries. So if other countries find out that, oh, they are able to produce the same thing as you are producing, so that means a substitute for your product. As a result, you have to sell, you or other countries have to sell to the same customers that you are selling for. You are selling to. As a result, reduces your own revenue. So it is dangerous for you to rely on one commodity. That's the first point. Two, commodity prices are unpredictable. They are commodities. So they can be high today, low tomorrow. So as a result of that, if they are low, if the prices are low, it affects your revenue. So it declines your balance of payment current account. Two. And the last point I made is that both situations above may bring about low growth. Both situations, reliance over dependence or a low GDP, low prices, might bring about a low growth, a low GDP, low growth / GDP. The economy. Is it clear? So that ends Paper 1, January 2019.